I was curled up on the cold bathroom tiles, each breath sharp and shallow, when I heard my mother's voice on the other side of the door. Stay quiet, don't ruin his life. Not, are you okay? Not what happened. Just a warning to protect the person who had just broken my ribs. That was the moment I realized. I didn't have a family. I had witnesses, people who saw my pain and chose to look away. My name is Emily Hart. I'm 26. I teach kindergarten, and until that night, I believed being the quiet, good daughter would keep me safe. But silence didn't protect me. It erased me. What changed everything wasn't a scream or a fight. It was the voice of a doctor I had never met before. She looked at my bruises, then at me, and said 5 words that cracked everything open. I know what really happened. I always thought that if I was good enough, quiet enough, they'd finally see me. Growing up, I did everything right. Straight A's, early bedtime, polite thank yous. I never slammed a door, never raised my voice. I became the kind of daughter who was easy to forget because I thought invisibility was the price of love. My parents never said it outright, but the rules were unspoken and ironclad. Kyle came first. My younger brother was the golden boy, star pitcher of his high school team, the one whose photos covered our walls. His name was the one my father shouted from the bleachers. His injuries were family emergencies. His wins were treated like national holidays. Meanwhile, I was the one who did the dishes quietly during the celebrations. I left for college as soon as I could. 4 years of freedom. 4 years of learning how to breathe on my own. But when my lease ended last winter and rent prices skyrocketed, I moved back in with my parents just temporarily, I told myself. Just a few months to save up. But deep down, there was something else. A part of me still hoped that coming home meant something more. That maybe things had changed. That maybe they'd changed. They hadn't. It took less than a week to fall back into the old rhythm. Kyle's schedule dictated dinner time. His protein powder and sports drinks dominated the kitchen. His laundry accidentally ended up in my basket. My parents hovered over him like bodyguard shaft cheering squad, half damage control. One night at dinner, Kyle said 2 sentences about his training routine, and my dad spent 20 minutes analyzing it like gospel. When I mentioned a funny story about one of my students, no one even looked up from their plates. I was 26 and somehow still 12 again. And it wasn't just neglect, it was erasure. My childhood photos had quietly disappeared from the hallway, replaced by Kyle's trophies and game day posters. When I asked my mom about it, she just said, "Oh, I didn't even notice." I noticed. Still, I didn't complain. I made myself useful folded laundry, kept the fridge stocked, refilled the ice packs Kyle used after training. I told myself that was love, that this is what loyalty looked like. I told myself that if I kept being easy, they'd remember I was there. I didn't want conflict. I didn't want drama. I just wanted a little space at the table. Maybe a thanks once in a while. Maybe someone asking how my day went. But in this house, kindness flowed one way, and silence was a currency you were expected to spend. So I stayed quiet. Until the night Kyle lost a game and lost control. That was the night I stopped being invisible. It started with dents in the drywall. Small at first, just a knuckle-shaped scuff near the edge of Kyle's doorframe, then a fist-sized hole beside the laundry room light switch. My dad patched it one weekend, muttering something about cheap construction. But I knew. I always knew. Sometimes I'd be unloading the dishwasher and hear Ida's sudden thud upstairs, a crash of something hitting the wall, followed by silence. That kind of silence that makes your skin tighten because you know it means someone's trying to pretend nothing happened. His girlfriend used to flinch at loud noises. She stopped coming around after a while. No explanation, just a quiet fade. Mom said she was too sensitive anyway. One morning I opened the fridge and noticed all the yogurt was gone. Kyle's diet demanded exact macros, and apparently I had eaten one of his vanilla cups by mistake. That night, he stormed into the kitchen, knocked over a stack of dishes I had just dried, and said, "Next time, maybe buy your own." My mom didn't even look up from her crossword. That was the pattern. Kyle erupted. Everyone else absorbed the damage. It was like living inside a snow globe, peaceful on the outside. But the moment someone shook it, everything flew into chaos. Except no one acknowledged the shaking. They just smiled, swept the snow back into place, and pretended it never happened. I tried to normalize it too. Told myself every family has its thing. That Kyle was just stressed. That I was overreacting. But deep down I felt it. The imbalance, the fear, the way I shrank whenever I heard his keys in the door. What haunted me more than his anger, though, was the devotion it bought him. My parents never missed a game. They rearranged their lives around his practices, his recovery, his mood swings. My mom packed protein boxes like a personal chef. My dad called him champ even when he sulked through dinner like a toddler. I remember one night I was sitting on the back porch, trying to decompress after a long day at school. Kyle came out, saw me sitting there, and said flatly, "I need this space to stretch." I stood up without a word and went inside. I think that was the moment something cracked, not just in the wall behind the laundry room, but inside me. A small fracture in the part of me that still believed if I just stayed small enough, I'd be loved. But even then, I didn't say anything. Didn't journal it, didn't text a friend, didn't cry in the shower. I just folded the moment into my memory, one more crease in the paper doll I'd become. Because in our house, speaking up was betrayal. And I was still trying to be loyal. It was a Saturday. Kyle had a showcase game that afternoon, one of the last before pro scouts made their decisions. My parents were electric with anticipation. My mom spent the morning prepping his special pre-game meal. My dad paced the kitchen like a man waiting on a stock market report. I stayed out of the way, as usual. When Kyle left for the game, the air shifted. My mom turned on soft music, started folding laundry in the living room. My dad sat with a glass of iced tea, murmuring about how far he's come. I spent the evening wiping counters that didn't need cleaning. And then he came home. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the pictures on the hallway wall. The air changed again, but this time, it thickened, like fog before a storm. His gym bag hit the floor with a thud. I heard him mutter something angry, slurred. I was still in the kitchen, methodically drying the last of the silverware. He stomped in, face dark, shoulders coiled. His breath reeked of beer. He opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle, cracked it open, and slammed the door hard enough to shake the magnets off. "What are you looking at?" he snapped, eyes locking on mine. "Nothing," I said quickly. "I was just cleaning up." My voice was soft, careful. I knew this version of Kyle, the brittle, seething one, the one looking for a place to dump his failure. He took a swig of beer, then tossed the cap across the room. "This whole season's a damn joke," he growled. "Coach doesn't know what he's doing. Idiot ruined everything." I didn't want to say anything. I should have stayed silent. But I wanted to help. I really did, so I tried. "It's just one game," I said, voice small but sincere. "You'll get another shot. It's not like it's the end of the world." The words weren't mocking. They were meant to comfort. But Kyle's eyes went black. "What did you just say?" he whispered. It wasn't really a question. It was a warning. "Nothing. I didn't get to finish." He closed the distance in 2 strides, grabbed the front of my shirt, and shoved me backward into the granite countertop. The edge caught me in the ribs like a hammer. Pain exploded through my side, and I gasped screamed as the air was knocked out of me. Before I could fall, he kicked me. Hard. Right where the counter had hit. There was a sound, a sharp, wet crack that didn't feel real. My body folded to the floor. I remember the tile against my cheek. I remember not being able to breathe. Then, nothing. When I came to, I was still on the kitchen floor. The pain was like a living animal inside me, clawing with every breath. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't even cry. All I could do was gasp in short, sharp bursts. My mother knelt beside me, but she wasn't looking at me. She was listening. For my father's footsteps. "Emily," she hissed, "you need to get up, now." "I can't," I rasped. "I can't breathe." She finally looked at me, but her face held no softness, just fear. Fear for him. "Say you fell," she said. "You tripped and hit the counter. You know how delicate this moment is for Kyle. Don't ruin it." I didn't answer. But inside, something else had cracked. And this time, it wasn't a rib. It was the spell. The next morning, the pain was unbearable. It had settled overnight into something sharp and constant. Breathing hurt. Standing upright was almost impossible. Even blinking made my ribs throb. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I just lay there in my bed, holding myself together with shallow breaths and silence. Around 9 a.m., my father knocked once then, opened the door without waiting. "Get dressed," he said. "I'm taking you to urgent care." He didn't ask what happened, didn't ask how I was feeling, just turned and walked away. I moved slowly, wincing with each step as I pulled on jeans and a hoodie. When I reached the car, he was already in the driver's seat, engine running. I sank in beside him, every motion a fresh reminder that something inside me had fractured. We drove in silence. No music, no small talk. Then, halfway there, he finally spoke. "You fell," he said flatly, eyes still on the road. "You tripped, hit the edge of the counter. That's what you're going to tell them." It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a threat. It was a command. "Kyle's devastated," he added. "Your mother hasn't slept. We don't need more drama." I nodded once. Just once. I didn't trust my voice to say the lie out loud. When we arrived at the clinic, I held myself together as best I could. A nurse took my vitals. Blood pressure, heart rate. She asked what happened. I fell," I said. The words tasted like ash. She raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Just scribbled something on the clipboard and said, "The doctor will be in shortly." I sat there on the exam table, legs dangling, hands clenched in my lap. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Every second felt like an hour. I was rehearsing my lines in my head, over and over. "You tripped. It was an accident. You're just clumsy. It's nothing." The door opened. She walked in wearing a long white coat and quiet eyes. She looked to be in her early 50s. Her name tag read Dr. Lillian Rowe. She didn't speak right away, just glanced down at her chart, then up at me. Her gaze wasn't cold or clinical. It was measured. Present. "Emily, right?" she said gently. I nodded. "I'm going to take a look at your side. Let me know if anything hurts." She pressed along my ribs, carefully, but when she reached the right side, I couldn't stop the gasp that escaped my lips. Her hand froze. She looked me in the eyes. "This pattern of bruising," she said softly, "doesn't look like a fall." My chest tightened. My throat burned. I felt it coming, the panic, the lie, the weight of it all pressing down again. But before I could answer, she added, "You don't have to say anything yet. I just want you to know, I see it. I've seen this before." She didn't accuse. She didn't push. But in that one sentence, she cracked the script wide open. I didn't answer her right away. My mouth opened, but no words came out. All I could do was stare at the floor, blinking hard to keep the tears from spilling. Dr. Rowe didn't press. She simply said, "I'm going to order x-rays, but I'd like to talk again once we have the images." She left the room quietly, and I sat there frozen, ashamed, and somehow seen. I had lied so many times in that house. "I'm fine. It's okay. I just slipped." But no one ever looked at me the way Dr. Rowe had. Not with suspicion, not with pity. With truth. And something inside me, something tightly wound and carefully hidden, started to tremble. The x-rays didn't lie. She returned 20 minutes later, a thin envelope of film in her hands. She slipped them into the light box on the wall, flipped the switch, and there they were. The breaks. One clean, one jagged, one partially fractured. 3 ribs, she said quietly. "That much damage requires force. A fall like the one you described wouldn't cause this." She turned to face me fully now. Her voice stayed calm, but there was no softness in her tone anymore, only certainty. "I'm going to ask you again, Emily." She pulled a rolling stool closer and sat down across from me, eye level. Her eyes didn't blink. "Did someone do this to you?" My lips trembled. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say no and end the conversation. I could already hear my father's voice. "You'll ruin everything. You're exaggerating. He didn't mean to." My mother's pleading, "He has a future. Don't take that away." But in front of me was a woman who didn't belong to my family, who owed me nothing and still cared more than any of them ever had. I looked up at her. "My brother," I whispered. The moment the words left my mouth, I broke. Tears poured from my eyes without permission. My shoulders shook with the weight of years I hadn't allowed myself to feel. I covered my mouth, afraid of how loud it would get, afraid that if I really started crying, I might not stop. "I'm sorry," I stammered through the tears. "Please don't say anything. You don't understand my family. He'll lose everything." Dr. Rowe didn't reach for tissues. She didn't pat my hand or say, There. Instead, she let the silence hold us, strong and still. Then she said the words that would change my life. "I understand more than you think. But Emily, he broke your ribs, and I am a mandated reporter. That means if I believe abuse has occurred, I am legally required to report it. I shook my head, panicking. Please, please don't. It'll tear everything apart. I'm okay. I'll be okay. Her eyes didn't flinch. But you're not okay. And this isn't your burden to carry. My responsibility is to protect you, not his future. I started to speak again, to beg, but she gently held up a hand. You've been silenced enough. She stood and walked to the phone on the wall. And just like that, it wasn't up to me anymore. She called Child Protective Services first because I still technically lived in the home where the abuse occurred. Then law enforcement. She documented everything, carefully, professionally. She took photographs of the bruising, logged the chart notes, and made sure the report was airtight. I sat there, still trembling, still stunned, but I wasn't alone anymore. Someone had chosen to believe me. Someone had acted. And for the first time in my life, the truth belonged to Minot, just to the people who tried to bury it. By the time my father pulled into the driveway, everything had changed. There was a police cruiser parked in front of the house. Its lights weren't flashing, but the presence was unmistakable. Quiet, official. I stared at it from the passenger seat, my breath catching in my throat. My father said nothing. He just gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles pale. When we stepped inside, it was like walking into a thunderstorm already mid-roar. My mother was pacing the living room, her phone clenched in her hand like a weapon. Her eyes shot toward me the second I walked in, wide, red-rimmed, and full of something I couldn't name. "What did you do?" she hissed. I opened my mouth, but she didn't wait for an answer. "You told them? After everything we've done for you?" Her voice cracked on the last word, not from sadness but rage. Kyle was nowhere to be seen. I later learned the police had taken him in for questioning. Then my father turned on me. He grabbed my arm, not hard enough to bruise, but tight enough to hurt. His face was inches from mine, his breath sharp. "I told you to keep your mouth shut," he snarled. "You just destroyed your brother's future. I hope you're happy." And for a second, I almost felt guilty. Almost. But then I remembered the crack, the kick, the kitchen floor cold beneath my cheek. I looked him in the eye and said nothing. While they yelled, circled, unraveled, I walked past them. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just went to my room, opened the closet, and pulled out the suitcase I had never really unpacked. It took me 10 minutes to gather my things, a few changes of clothes, my teaching materials, a small box of keepsakes from college photos, a dried bouquet, a note from a student that said, "You make me feel safe." I paused when I picked it up. Safe. What a foreign word. When I stepped back into the hallway, my mother blocked the path, arms crossed. "You're tearing this family apart," she said. "You've always been dramatic, but this is unforgivable." I didn't answer. I didn't owe her one. I slid past her without touching her and walked straight to the front door. No one followed me. No one begged me to stay. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter but real. Honest. I had no plan, no savings, no place lined up. But I had a voice, and someone who had finally heard it. That was enough to start. I didn't have a grand plan. Just a suitcase, a fractured rib cage, and the business card Dr. Rowe had slipped into my hand before I left the clinic. It led me to a women's support network 2 neighborhoods away. They didn't have space in their main shelter, but a caseworker named Janelle found me a subsidized studio apartment over a laundromat. The windows were cracked, the mattress was thin, but it had a lock, and no one yelled when I coughed too loud. It was mine. For the first time in my life, I could choose silence, not because I was forced into it, but because the world outside finally stopped pressing on my chest. Dr. Rowe called to check on me 3 times in the first week. She put me in touch with Sarah Kim, a pro bono attorney who specialized in domestic abuse cases. Sarah was in her 30s, sharp as a blade, and never once looked at me like I was fragile. She didn't flinch when I told her what Kyle did. She just asked, "Do you want to file?" And I said, yes. We sued Kyle for medical expenses and emotional damages. We also filed a restraining order. Just standing in the courthouse, filling out those forms, was the hardest thing I'd ever done. My hands shook, but I didn't stop. I blocked every number my parents used, changed mine entirely. I deleted the voicemails my mother left wailing about how I was ripping the family apart. I ignored the texts from my father, full of threats and manipulations disguised as disappointment. They'd already cut me off emotionally years ago. Now, they just made it official. I started therapy twice a week. I talked about the kitchen floor, the granite counter, the way my voice had always been too soft for the people who claimed to love me. And slowly, that voice grew louder. I bought a secondhand bookshelf. Hung my first framed photo, just a landscape from a flea market, but it felt like mine. I bought a plant and didn't kill it. I cooked for myself, even when it hurt to lift the pot. Each of these things felt like rebellion. Each act was a small declaration. I exist. I matter. Then one night, while flipping through local grant listings online, I found something. A call for proposals supporting new community programs for at-risk youth. And suddenly, the pieces clicked. I stayed up all night drafting my idea. An after-school space for girls from violent or neglectful homes. A room with books, warm lighting, food that didn't come with shame. A place to speak to be heard. I called it the quiet truth. Because sometimes, the quietest voices carry the most weight. A month later, I got the grant. I cried when I read the email, not out of fear, not from pain, but because for the first time, my voice had built something. Not for them. Not against them. But for me, it happened on a Thursday night. We were hosting a small fundraiser for the Quiet Truth Just, a local event at the public library. Nothing fancy. A few folding chairs, a snack table, a podium. But to me, it felt like a cathedral. A space where stories lived, where voices rose without fear. I was standing at the front, note cards in hand, sharing how our program had grown. 23 girls enrolled, 3 volunteers, 2 partnerships with local schools. Each number felt like a seed that had taken root in real soil. And then, the doors burst open. Not quietly, not by accident. They slammed against the back wall, rattling the hinges. I looked up and there he was. Kyle. His eyes locked on mine instantly. He looked thinner, harder, worn down in a way that had nothing to do with physical training. The cocky swagger he used to wear like armor had splintered into something more jagged. "You," he shouted, pointing at me from the back aisle. "You ruined my life." The room fell silent. Dozens of faces turned from me to him. Some gasped, others froze. "You told lies," he continued, louder now. "Over one stupid accident. You blew everything up. I lost everything because of you." My heart pounded, fast and loud, but it didn't feel like fear. Not this time. The old me would have stepped back, hidden behind the podium, apologized maybe, or at least shrunk. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I calmly placed my note cards on the lectern, stepped down from the platform, and walked toward the center of the room. I didn't rush. I didn't shake. I just made sure everyone could see me. Then I turned to face the room and not just Kyle. The room. My voice was clear, steady. "This," I said, gesturing to him, "is the man who broke my ribs." A ripple of whispers swept through the chairs. I took another breath. "And this is the family," I added, "that told me to stay quiet, to protect him, to protect everything but me." The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. It was full of recognition, of reckoning. Kyle's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The weight of the room had shifted. It no longer tilted toward him. A security guard stepped forward and gently took him by the elbow. "Sir, I need you to come with me." Kyle didn't resist. He sputtered once, glared at me, but his voice so loud a moment ago was gone. When the doors closed behind him, the silence held for one more beat. Then someone clapped. Then another. And another. But I didn't need applause. I stood still. I let the silence wrap around me not as isolation, but as acknowledgement. That night, I didn't go home shaking. I didn't cry in the shower. I went home, took off my shoes, fed my plant, and stood by the window for a long time, watching the streetlights blink against the dark. I never saw my parents again. Never returned their messages, never looked back. Kyle never got another contract. The lawsuit closed that door for good. But I didn't celebrate his downfall. Because this was never about destroying him. It was about choosing me. If you've ever been told to stay quiet, if you've ever been made small so someone else could shine, let this be your reminder. Your voice matters. Even if it shakes. Even if it's late. Even if you're the only one who believes it. Speak anyway.